and welcome to the Recreate Your Health Project. I'm your host, Miranda Dano, and I'm super excited because our guest today is a good friend of mine, Matt Gray. He is a certified high performance coach and the creator of the Clarity Track, which is one of the best ideas I've ever heard. So Matt, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about your background and why you chose coaching, and sort of explain what the Clarity Track is for people.
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, Miranda, thank you for having me on here. So excited to contribute and help anybody right now, in these strange times we're in. But I'll give you a little background on myself. So first of all, I guess I like to intro myself through the front of the business card and the back of the business card, right? So the front of the business card for the past 6 years or so has been basically focused on solving problems for Fortune 500 organizations and companies, problems consisting of, I would say, equal parts business, technology, and engineering. That's the kind of professional background. On the back of the business card has been where I put the passion, right? And that's what I'd say has been an even longer pursuit. And really that's been just an utter captivation with how we humans work internally from a psychological perspective, and especially how we can be better both for ourselves and for other people and each other, right? So that passion has kind of always been there, but it really came about in my early life as a means of survival when I faced some struggles earlier in my life, and struggles that really arose from kind of not knowing how to live in a way that would generate happiness and generate meaning and generate fulfillment. Just some unhealthy ways, and certainly not knowing how to implement that type of life. So around that time, I became just enthralled in the world of personal development. And after about, I would say, 10 years of, hundreds of books, thousands of articles, lectures, movies, podcasts, everything you can think of, it became clear to me that that world is so important, and that it's one of the most core and singular things we have is the ability to develop ourselves, but also that there's some major areas for improvement in the domain of personal improvement itself. And so I found that if there was any way that I could combine my understanding of engineering and process and sort of making outcomes happen within a business, and my obsession with human development and potential, it would be to kind of devise a system that worked more efficiently and effectively and more simply for people to personally develop. And so the Clarity Track was born out of that, and essentially it was born out of trying to solve a few areas of what I saw as deficiency in the personal development world. A couple ones, like it could be tough to consume if you've got to read a lot of long, dense books. We're moving to a very video-dominated and sort of interactive content world, and we're just saturated with data in general these days. So I figured to myself, hey, how do we really boil these things down to the most core principles there? Also, I saw that so much of what we learn in personal development is very abstract. It's conceptual, and not everybody thinks that way. In fact, a lot of people don't. A lot of people, like myself, think in more concrete terms, more functionally, pragmatically, in systems, in reason and logic and things like that. And I was like, how do we bring these principles to somebody who doesn't think in these more sometimes fluffy and bubbly kind of nebulous ways? And then the other things I noticed is that some of these personal development approaches can be very incompatible with each other. They can be, if you go all in on this way, it sort of means, well, what about this philosophy over here? And I found that it didn't really fit into a broader system, and it makes it a lot harder to implement some of the stuff in your life when things don't interrelate and mutually reinforce each other. And so the final piece was that I realized that some of the advice was very difficult to apply consistently, repeatedly, and over the course of time in any situation. So it just wasn't durable and sustainable enough to really implement in your life every single day. Right. So these were a few things that I noticed, and I was like, how do we make these ideas more easy to consume, more easy to continue doing day to day? And so I consider Clarity Track personal growth reverse engineered, essentially. We figure out how to help people fit into a very clear structure, build their own framework of essentially principles, ideas, concepts, habits, mindsets that all support each other. They're all compatible. They can be sequenced so that you kind of build on each other sequentially, but also cumulatively. And they are very repeatable, scalable, and simple for people to ingest. And so that is really the vision of the Clarity Track, I suppose.
I love it. And when you first told me your idea of the Clarity Track a long time ago when we first met, I was just blown away by the idea to sort of systemize and simplify. Because when you first get into personal development, it's like, I mean, there are so many, you can go so many different directions. You can be like super woo woo, or you can be super like tiny, tiny detail. It could be like everything in the world you have to take in one book, or like just do this one tiny thing. And there are so many different people that talk about it. And it's funny how you were saying that a lot of it can feel a little like fluffy. That's, you know, my brother and I talk about personal development a lot. We actually have a podcast where we do that. And he always says, you know, I'll be like, hey, have you read this book or whatever? And he'll be like, meh, I don't really like that guy because he doesn't tell me what to actually do. And he's very like, just tell me what to do. Like, sure, give me the idea so I understand why and what's happening. But then what do I do at the end of the day? So the fact that you have, you know, done so much research, which I know you have, you're such a researcher at heart. So when you've done the work for people, right? So that you can just be like, oh, okay, so here's my path that I follow, bing, bang, boom. I go through these things, and you can figure out how to, you know, use personal development in the way that it's intended, right? To help people like move forward in life and get to a better place.
100%. These ideas aren't useful if they can't be used. And, you know, the sort of hidden subtitle of the Clarity Track would be personal development for skeptics. It's people that don't really get it, how it's functionally going to improve things. Like, what is the real purpose of that? You know, is there really any big difference between doing this and doing that, and thinking this way or feeling that way? And so I want to make it so undeniable in some of these principles that it makes people really compelled to take these changes for themselves and give it a shot. So that's the Clarity Track. And, you know, it's a mix of content and coaching. So
love it. Love it so much. I'm going to move on to starting some of our questions that are a little bit more specific to our current time and what people are sort of dealing with. With that in mind, can you share with our audience, what would you say are your 3 best practices for staying healthy?
Yes.
3 top choices for them.
Sure. So they're not going to be groundbreakingly new ideas, but maybe we'll come at them from an angle that might be fresh, right? So first of all, the force multiplier to everything else is doing some type of physically engaging exercise, meaning physical activity that you are forced to be present for. That means hard workouts. That means things that force you to be mentally and emotionally in it, that force your body to improve and force your body and your physiology to become more efficient. So, you know, I say if you can find a way to sweat every single day, everything else in your life will get better. That's your diet will improve, your energy will improve, your sleep, your mood, your focus, your mindfulness, your relationships, your sex life. Everything is going to get better by doing that piece every single day.
Yeah. I love that detail too. Sorry to interrupt you. No. I love that detail too, to exercise in a way that your mind has to go there, right? I think that's an important piece of it. And sometimes people overlook or don't really put as much weight on when they think about exercise, but that's it. It's sort of like it's kind of like meditation at the same 100%. Time, where you have 100%. To like not think about anything else happening and just like, can I get through this set? Or can I, you know, go the extra mile, literally, whatever the case may be. So I really like that you singled out that detail.
Yeah, 100%. I think not only does it mean that you are you have to rise to a certain level of physical activity to be able to do it. If you're mentally and emotionally realizing I can't be somewhere else right now because I am that focused on accomplishing this physical action right now. But also,
Yeah.
you're right. It is a form of mindfulness meditation in a way. You're deeply in your body. People get it from lifting at the gym and deeply connecting to their muscular skeletal structure. People get it from doing long steady state cardio. People get it from doing martial arts and Brazilian jiu-jitsu and things like that. These are deeply present things when you're really engaging with them. So that's
Love
one.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Number two, I would call mind and emotional maintenance, which is you've got to do the repeatable things just to keep you at base level, right? If you dig into the science on how our minds work, we have a bit of a negativity bias. We have a bit of a tendency towards chaos and towards uncertainty and all these things, and it literally just
Yeah.
takes daily maintenance to keep us content and sane and peaceful, etc. So one of the first big ones there that I got to point to is meditation. Some form of meditation is really critical. And I'll say this because a lot of people have a misconception about it, I think. Not because it decreases stress during the practice, although it does, but because it is the best tool to learn really deep mindfulness. And pro level mindfulness can decrease stress, anxiety, and other difficult emotions throughout your entire life. Every moment to moment, it can actually decrease stress because it essentially is, getting so accustomed to how your body feels and what your nervous system is doing that you can actually interrupt that process between event, thought, and feeling. And you can get in there somewhere between thought and feeling usually and sort of be like, well, I'm realizing what my body's doing right now. I see how it wants to respond. And when you sort of break apart that process, you can live in a much more peaceful place. Um, I'll also say though that it's, and I think we'll get into this a little bit when we talk about how to deal with being at home all the time. It's
Yeah.
really important to hit a reset button in your day and return at some point to equanimity, right? Kind of a base level.
I love
Um,
that.
I compare it to, um, you know, some of the deepest rivers in the world, like the Congo River, right, is the deepest in the world. It's in Africa. At
Yeah.
some places, I think it's up to 750 feet deep. It's very deep.
Yeah.
What's happening in those rivers is at the surface level, the flow rate is fast. It's noisy. It's sort of violent, chaotic. Um, it's never still. It's always moving forward. It's always taking more space. However, at the bottom of that river, there are pockets of water that are moving slow enough. The turnover of water in these small spaces is slow enough where it can be essentially considered stationary. It's almost
Yeah.
completely still at the bottom of these rivers. And it's really important for us as humans to get down into that still place or
Hmm.
just, cause ourselves to become still like that for a moment so
Yeah.
that we can come back up and just have a little more control and live a little more comfort during those noisy periods, I think.
I
So,
love that analogy. It's so good. And I feel like I can use that as a tool the next time that I meditate, right? To like see myself sort of floating down
go down.
deeper into
Yep.
the river, right? So you can sort of like feel everything slowing down a little bit. I love that. What a smart way to think about it. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think that's key, and we all have that space deep down. It's just sometimes getting into it. 'Cause you got to imagine that we're trying to knock out all these goals and tasks and to dos during the day, and it's a lot like being on top of that river, uh, standing on a raft, trying to shoot a bow and arrow at a target while we're in this like chaos. And sometimes
Totally.
it takes getting still to take your breath, find your aim, etc.
Love that.
One more piece for emotional and mental maintenance is I would say get outdoors for 10 minutes minimum. A lot of us, we had some excuse to be outside, prior to all this, and now
Yeah.
we've sort of lost that excuse in some cases, and so we might be just indoors for hours, entire days sometimes, and realize we haven't even gotten outside. But getting outside, some fresh air, just open space, sunlight, all these things, 10, 15 minutes, take a walk. It can be really recharging to your spirit, I think.
Yeah. And those simple things are easy to dismiss, right? Because it's like, yeah, yeah, I know I should get some sunshine and take a walk. Like, like, yeah, of course, I know I need to do that. But that's kind of the special sauce, right? That's sort of how people end up being high performers or really succeeding in life is in giving weight to and knowing the importance and value of all those little choices that you make in a day. It doesn't
Mhm.
seem like a big deal to not do the walk every day,
Yeah.
but making sure that it's in there affects all these other areas of life.
Yeah, I think so. And you're right. It's a lot about like kind of creating some structure, creating some distinguishment in the day.
Yeah.
Um, the last thing I'll say is, uh, again, we've all heard this, but choosing your fuel intelligently. And this comes down to put what you put in your mouth and what you put in your body.
Yeah,
It's super easy to eat crappy food while you're at home, right? It's
for
it's
sure.
it's usually unhealthy food is the easiest to eat. Even a vegetable or an apple, you got to maybe wash it off or prepare it a little bit. Um, but it's so critical, especially because we're probably moving less or maybe active a little bit less, to be putting good things in your body, because that's going to affect everything else as well. Same deal as physical activity, right? It affects your energy and focus and sleep, etc. And so to at least make it a little bit easier, I would say, and this is going to be a recurring theme, I think, remove friction from the process of getting good nutrition. So,
Awesome.
you know, prepare a whole bunch of things at once and then make it so that when you go to the fridge, they're ready to go, or just flat out make it harder to make bad choices, right? Just don't buy the crappy stuff that you're going to snack on, so that when you go to the fridge, the only stuff you have there is healthy things. Um, Drinking water is so critical. As you can see here, I'm drinking my 32 ounce, number 2 or 3 of the day right now. Set
Yeah.
alarms to remind you to drink water. Buy a great 32 ounce tumbler to carry around with you. Put it in front of you so that you're drinking it all day. I like mine to be clear so that I can see exactly where I'm on the water line, so that I know when I need to refill and start drinking more of them. Perhaps I think I might do a page on claritytrack.com just to all the different gizmos and tools and gadgets that I've found to be just game changers in terms of small investments to help you out. Um,
Love that.
but yeah, I'd say don't sacrifice your nutrition, even while you're busy and while things are
Yeah.
chaotic and while you got to cook all these things, but don't
And
sacrifice there.
especially while, right? Especially
Especially
while you're
while.
doing all these things. Yeah. The other thing that I think, one of the good things that has come from people having more time at home is that if there's a time, like an opportunity that you've ever been given to start a new habit
Hmm.
or, create a new routine, now's your chance, right? I mean, you're not commuting anymore. You're not having to say no to your office mate about how you
Hmm.
don't want to run and grab burgers for lunch today. Like
Hmm.
all of those things that kind of get in the way when you're trying to eat healthy are gone. Now it's just you and your head game. Unfortunately, it is. And when it comes to, creating a routine that is going to help you move forward in life, now's the time to do it. So if
Yeah.
you're somebody who struggles with eating healthy or making good food choices, man, just make that your priority. Make that your one big thing that you take on during this challenging time. Like, this is going to be the moment where I really dial in my diet and do a good job there, right?
Such a good point. 100%, right? Because this is one of these few moments where our environment may be limited, right? We may have a little bit of control or less control about where we can expand out into, but the immediate environment we have a decent amount of control over. And
Yeah.
part of the diet thing that can be so tough is the sort of stimulus around us that causes us to eat crappy things, like the fast food place we drive by, or the friends going to that restaurant, or we're on the run and it's the only time we have time for, or whatever. We have
Yeah.
complete control right now over what's in our place and what we put in our mouth. So good point.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so speaking of the crazy environment that we have now, the way that everybody's routine has changed and everything is kind of up in the air for people. When you communicate with your audience right now, when you talk to your people, what do you feel like they need most from you right now?
Sure. Um, so the first thing is that I take a very broad view of how to approach everything that's going on right now. And I'm a gigantic fan of the Stoic philosophy and Stoicism, which, if you're unfamiliar, The Daily Stoic is a really great book to start. It's a page a day, which helps kind of break down that 2 millennia-year-old philosophy into little day-sized bits. But one of the biggest undercurrents of all Stoicism is really about figuring out what you can and cannot control. Because there's a lot right now that is just out of your control. It's out of all of our control. And you can feel disempowered by that, but you can also completely look at the other side of it and say, I feel deeply empowered within the environment that I can control. So I encourage people to figure out what is in their circle of control, what's in their circle of influence, just outside of that circle of control, and just
Yeah.
beyond that, what's in their circle of concern. And beyond that, you gotta scrub it from your mind, scrub it out, because it's only kind of going to torment you if you can't do anything about it. Right? Just focus on exactly what you can and put all energy and put all mental focus into that. So I think that's a huge piece. And obviously, this is, I guess, a little bit of a spoiler, but the thing that you can control the most is yourself. You can control what you decide to think and what you decide to do, pretty much. And so that is the most empowering thing I think that we can all hear, is that we have full control over ourselves in this time. So let go of the things you can't control, work on yourself, optimize yourself, use this as a time to build on yourself and kind of build some anti-fragility where we use these challenges as an opportunity to grow and learn some stuff. I think that's the broad view, I would say. Another piece that I'll add in is that while it's important to be, hold ourselves to high standards, it's also important to be compassionate with yourselves. Doesn't mean let yourself off the hook or excuse yourself from anything, but try and step outside yourself for a sec and look down on yourself and view yourself as a family member, a friend, or something like that, and be like, realize that this is craziness, this is unprecedented, this can be tough, and just give yourself a break. If you're feeling stressed or you're feeling a little freaked out, don't add to that by beating yourself up and criticizing yourself and saying, I should be stronger, I should be more focused. I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, now is the perfect time to start that project and do it all, but I'm feeling a little scattered and stressed to do it. The wrong thing is to say, I'm such an idiot for not being able to, use this time optimally right now. Exactly. Like, do give yourself the compassion that, this is tough. It's not the easiest thing. This moment might be a little bit hard, but you can move beyond it. But I would say,
Be kind to yourself, right?
be kind to yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And, as, a mom that works from home and, has my kids with me all the time, and somebody who studies high performance, it's easy to get hard on yourself, right? I should have been more patient. I should have done something more special with the kids. I should have crossed these 3 things off my list when I only got through, item number 1, or whatever the case may be. And you're right. I find myself in moments being, just always pushing, when typically what ends up happening when I do decide to give myself a break is the payoff is huge, right? So to just like be kind to yourself and say, you know what, just do nothing for the rest of the afternoon. Or instead of trying to get that one more item done, you're not in the right place to do it, you're feeling overwhelmed, now's your chance to go for that walk, right? Put the kids in the stroller and go make that happen. And typically what ends up happening when you can give yourself a little bit of grace is, on the other side of that, you can approach whatever it is that you were being hard on yourself about in a much better light, right? And just be more productive and more kind, if that is where you end up going. So I think that's really good advice for people.
Yeah. Agree. Agree completely. The last thing I'd say also is that
Yeah.
Well, a couple things, I guess. One is to be, this is, I'd say, that stoic idea about controlling what you can control. One of the things that's kind of a requisite for what you can and can't control is that it's in the present moment. You can't control what you've just done, a minute ago. If you, right, if you
Yeah.
didn't do the thing you want to do with your kids, you tell yourself, the next opportunity I have, I'm going to do that. But, you
Sure.
can't do anything about the past. We also can't do anything about the future right now. So it doesn't really, I see a lot of people kind of wondering every day, okay, is next week going to be the week that we go back to normal? When is it this day? When is it going to end? Is it going to be, it's all stuff that's beyond our control and beyond our influence for sure.
Yeah.
Right now, I mean, right, we can influence it in our small own way by taking the right procedures and precautions and kind of
Sure.
following best practice right now. But outside of that, to wonder every day about when things are going to change, it's not really useful right now. It's better to be in this current moment. Here's what today looks like. We know what today is going to be like. Things are going to change drastically today. Own the day, and do that as best as you can. And then the last thing I would say, and I think we'll get into this maybe a little bit more when we get into sort of optimization, is to be really thoughtful about structuring your day and distinguishing each moment of the day, because all of a sudden we're in this one setting and it can feel kind of chaotic right now. It can feel like, wow, the whole day just flowed from one thing to the next.
Yeah.
So figure out a way, we're used to being forced to go from activity to activity, and we kind of use that as an excuse to structure our day. We don't have a lot of that structure right now. So it's important that we kind of create the phases of our day with some purpose and some, specificity.
Yeah, I love that you started talking about optimization. I'm really excited to talk to you about that because I know you're a very thoughtful person. So I personally can't wait to have your advice on this. I'm currently sitting in my home office. I'm used to being able to be a professional when it's time to be a professional and be a mom when it's time to be a mom. And I'm used to having as much physical space and time in between those two things as I want. And the way that my day goes now is I have about 1 minute to transition and get some things done. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And, in a new space, working from home, do you have any advice on how to sort of optimize that environment, how to do my best with that?
Totally. Of course. This is some of my favorite stuff, because this is, making sweeping emotional changes or changing our subconscious beliefs and things like that. There's a lot of work there, and there's no guarantees
Sure.
about it. But
Yeah.
changing our environment and doing tactical things and things like that to make everything else easier is completely controllable, usually, or very controllable.
Yeah.
And so I get excited about these things because we can make very concrete actions to make life easier. So, the theme, I would say, through maybe everything I've said here, but especially with environment, is to sharpen the axe, right? This goes back to an old Abraham Lincoln, I believe, quote, where he
Yeah.
was asked, you know, if he essentially said, in terms of efficacy, he said, if I was given 6 hours to cut down a tree with an axe, I would spend 4 hours of that 6 hours sharpening the axe,
Right.
the
Yeah, I
other
love
two
that.
cutting it down, right? So all of these things, mastering your environment, optimizing and stuff like that, are going to improve everything you do in that environment in ways you will probably even forget are helping you. But once you do it once, you can kind of set it that way. So I want to touch through a couple very tactical things that people can go out and do, just very, very simply, to optimize the environment.
Awesome.
Okay, so the physical and aesthetic surroundings are so critical for everybody, but especially for certain people who are very sensitive to their environment. I happen to be very aware of kind of the atmosphere and the aesthetics and all these things. And my attention is very finely tuned, so that all types of things can throw me off kilter if they distract me. So I'm
Sure.
really trying to control
Yeah.
for all those things. Talk about a couple of the basics. One, I will say, is light. Uh, we may be used to working in an open office location, or getting out into the world a lot and being outdoors and stuff like that. If we're inside a lot now, it's really critical to master the lighting of the space you're in. And part of that comes down to just the basics of biochemistry of the brain, but also how our circadian rhythms work and how our wake sleep cycles work, et cetera, which can
Yeah.
really be thrown off when we're inside our home for hours at a time. So
Yeah.
when it comes to light, I would say one of the biggest ones is getting the proper type of light. So during the day, you want to find a way to get access to a certain temperature light. When I say temperature light, I mean sort of the tone of the light, whether it's a really warm, kind of reddish, orangish light, or during the day, you really want to look for a more white, cool colored light, right? So
Okay.
when you go shopping for lights, the best that I can recommend are either a brand called LifeX, LIFX, which let you actually move from a really, really warm light into a really white, cool light, depending on the cycle of the sun and what time of day it is. And so
Cool. So it does it for you?
it does it for you, completely automate. Yeah, so I like LifeX. I like the interface and the technology. I think Philips Hue can do some similar things. But basically for me, I've set it so that you can set it so that it's automatically just mimics the tone, the temperature essentially and brightness of the sunlight throughout the day. So it'll start in a very kind of bright white, sort of like the tone you see in my video here. And then as the day goes on, it gets more warm until at the very, very end of the night. It's you can set it to be very dim and very warm. I have it, I have some specifics so that in my living room, kitchen, bedroom, essentially it's coaxing my mind to sort of wind down and eliminate some of those blue lights that can be so stimulating. But either way, whatever you do, you want to look for some lights during the day that are between that 4,000 to 6,000 Kelvin. That's how you rate the temperature of the light. 4,000 to
Okay.
6,000 is great for during the daytime. And it's that you're getting a lot of that blue light that improves alertness, and improves mood. Similar tone that's used for people with a seasonal affective disorder, because it essentially is affecting brain chemicals that regulate mood and regulate sleep. And so if you can get those going somewhere around sunrise, that's really critical throughout the day. It's going to keep you energized, etc. Just as important, you want to have lights that are around anywhere from like 1,500 to 3,000 Kelvin at
Okay.
night, because you got to be supporting and embracing your body's natural circadian rhythms and making sure that you don't throw off your sleep, because some of the other cues that we don't normally rely on to tell us when we should be up and when we should be moving from activity to activity are maybe gone from your life right now, based on your environment. So the lighting is a key one there.
I love that. I love that advice. It's very practical and very detailed. Like, no, just go and do this exact thing. So that's awesome.
Yep,
What
pretty
what else
simple.
what else you got for me?
So simple one, fresh air and temperature, right? You know, during the day, a little bit warmer. During the night, the optimal sleeping temperature is between 60 and 68 degrees, believe it or not. It might seem cold to some folks, but I suppose being from Boston, I like sleeping in a bit of cold. I have my Nest, which is also fully automated, so I never think about changing the temperature. It just slowly gets colder as the night goes on until about bedtime for me, when it's 68 degrees and I know it's time to hop under those covers.
Yeah.
That's going to help you also regulate your alertness and sleep-wake cycles. Open up windows if you can, get some fresh air. Even smelling fresh air can help you feel a little less stir crazy, like you're connected to the outdoors a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and then certainly the sound of your environment, right? You got to figure out what works for you in terms of focus. If you're somebody who small sound events can throw you off, then maybe find some white noise or some ambient noise. If you like some gentle music, figure out where you can get some classical music. I rely on, when I'm doing work, I like either something like a coffee house jazz type music, or I'll listen to a tropical house instrumental music, which is upbeat but no words, so it doesn't really grab my mind and bring me into the song. It sort of just background moves me along.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I can link to all the playlists that I like on claritytrack.com. And then but figuring those things out are really key.
I like that. That's really good advice too for people that have kids at home, which a lot of people do. It's impossible to turn that in your, like as a mom or a dad, as a parent, it's impossible to turn that thing off in your brain. When you hear your kids, you basically, your brain turns to mush for like a full second,
Right.
right? Like you hear your kid cry, and there's no way you couldn't possibly be like, oh gosh, I got to go help that kid.
Of course.
So the white noise or some sort of ambient noise is really good advice for people who have kids at home.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's just a way of, essentially muddling out any big distractions because it all kind of fits into a light background noise.
Yeah.
So the next piece, and I think I consider this probably the most important one, is
Okay.
controlling your physical space. Those are all kind of atmosphere type, things. Your physical
Yeah.
space is critical because we are visual creatures. We respond to visual stimulus and stimuli and cues. We create associations too with, and even behavior patterns based on what we see and where we are. So a couple of things I want to touch on there. First of all, the space itself. We often create associations with what we should be doing or how we should be feeling, whatever emotional state we should be in, what our energy levels should be at, what our motivation levels should be at, and even what our objectives should be in certain rooms.
Yeah.
So when we're stuck in a home or even stuck in an apartment or whatever it is, you got to find a way to sort of distinguish the purpose of certain areas of your home. So if you do
Okay.
have an office, great. If all you have is a sort of nook in your studio apartment where you do your work, make that your place where you do your work. Try not to be on Facebook or social media or shopping or whatever when you're at that desk. Try and make that your
Yeah.
place where you're down to business, because your brain forms these associations with what you should be doing and how you should be feeling in those places. So,
I love that. So if you're new to working from home and the most comfortable place for you to sit with your laptop in your lap is your couch, that's probably not the right call, right?
right.
Because it's just your body's like, what am I doing here? Am I napping?
Yeah.
Or am I binge watching Tiger King or whatever that show is
Yeah,
that everybody's
exactly.
talking? Is that the show?
Tiger King,
Uh,
Joe
yeah.
Exotic.
Or should I be working, right? Your brain's like, what are we doing here? And then there's like this inner battle all the time of get focused again, get focused again. So I love that idea. Even if you don't have a dedicated office or whatever, you can have a corner, you have a
Mm-hmm.
table, you have a kitchen, you have a, whatever it is, a place where you can sort of consider where you get your work done. That isn't necessarily the same place that you nap.
Yeah, and I would also point to the flip side of it too, which is that there have been several studies that, for instance, if you bring your work laptop or your cell phone into your bedroom, your brain starts to associate that place as a place where activity happens, and you're mentally active and things like that. And that you don't want that for your bedroom, right? You want that to be
Right.
the place where you say, this is the sleep temple. This is all that goes on here. So
Right.
much so to the point that I actually have. I've got an old phone that I leave on my nightstand in my bedroom. I've deleted all social media from it. It doesn't get calls or texts. The only things on it are an alarm, some notepads and stuff like that, my
Yeah.
Kindle app, meditation app, stuff like that.
Sure.
And I make an effort to, when it's nighttime, I plug my regular phone in somewhere out in the kitchen or living room, and I go
Yep.
into my bedroom where there's only my sort of disconnected phone, where I can't even be connected to the outside world. So my brain isn't saying, do I have a new text? Did somebody DM me
Sure.
on
Sure.
Instagram? Like, it doesn't even occur. So things like that are really critical.
Love
Um,
that.
yeah. And
I
then,
like that. A lot of people want to know that they should try to not have their phone in the bedroom, but then they use it for some sleep time activities, like you said, like a meditation app, or
mhm.
maybe they play white noise on it or something like that while they're sleeping. So they end up having it next to them anyway, and then all of those other things occur. So I really like that idea. Use an old phone, use it
Mhm.
only for whatever it is that is relaxing for you, and still you can leave your other one in the kitchen. That's awesome.
Yep.
Great
Yep.
advice.
Clear it out of those time suck apps, those addictive apps. If you want to take it
Yeah.
even a step farther, just a little tidbit. Turn that phone in your bedroom to grayscale, black and white, because essentially on all our phones, these app designers and engineers are making them colored in a way that they grab our attention, and we create these associations with seeing certain apps and seeing certain things that sort of drives our behavior on the phone. But when you
Yeah.
switch it to grayscale, it actually kind of cuts out all of those visual cues. so that no app feels more appealing than the other. We don't have these tendencies to spot certain apps. I do want to also make sure I point towards the contents of the spaces that you're in. This is a
Okay.
really critical one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, dedicating the mindset of the space you're in, that's important. The contents of the spaces you're in, I'd say, is just as important. And it's an important concept that people need to be aware of in general, that our mind is like a task manager on our computer.
Sure.
Every single thing in the environment, believe it or not, is taking some small sliver of our brain's computational CPU and RAM. Essentially, it's our brain power, mental energy associated with that tiny little task. If you ever opened up your task manager, you realize that there's the email checking function, and it's taken up a little bit of the power of the computer or whatever it is. Our
Sure.
mind is the same way, and so every single in your environment carries some slice of your mental energy, even if it's something that you have not kind of consciously thought about in 20 years. Believe it or not, your brain is filtering that data out, right? There's
Sure.
a part of your brain associated with attention called the reticular activating system. And that system is essentially, it's very good at directing attention, and therefore energy. And so it's particularly good at selective attention, where it sort of filters all things out and you see what you want to see. But that filtering process takes cycles. If I just want to focus on my laptop, but I've also got my phone here, and I've got a little trinket over here, and I've got some things I need to do there, and this and that. Our brain is actually like playing defense against these things, and it can actually take a lot of energy just to do that, just to fight against that, so that when it comes time to make real important deep work type decisions or trying to get into flow, it's going to be really tough. So if you can save your brain from disqualifying everything else in your environment that you don't want to focus on, it can save a lot of energy. So literally hide those things away, or even better, give them away, right? You can really dip into the Marie Kondo method and simplify your environment just for basic wellness purposes. And same goes for anything that's going to be an invasive distraction, like your phone or notifications on your desktop. Turn off your notifications, silence your apps, just limit all the things that are vying for your attention if you can. So I'd say those are a few really big things to be able to simplify.
That's incredible. You sort of answered my next question too. I was going to ask you about how to minimize distractions. And it sounds like your environment is a huge part of that, right? Where it's like there are these physical things in front of you that you might not even know are distracting you from, getting quality work done. Or you think about, post-it notes and having them kind of all over your desk. And it's just reminding you that there are other things you should be doing constantly, right? I mean, you can have to-dos, and it's actually a good practice to get things out of your head and sort of written down, but keep them somewhere that isn't necessarily in your view while you're trying to focus on something else, right? Do you have other tips for people to help with distraction?
Definitely. Yeah. So when it comes to distraction and sort of doing what you want to do and not doing what you don't want to do, first off, like I said, out of sight, out of mind, right? If it's just not, if it's hidden somewhere and you don't see it, it's going to be much more difficult. So let's take the inverse of that. One of the best books you can go read on habit formation and maintenance and sustainability is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Really good book. So a couple big ones that he points to, and he could not be more right about this, is that in order to build a habit, you got to make it really obvious. You got to make it easy to do. You should also make it satisfying. So a couple examples of that, and then we'll talk about how to not do things and avoid distractions. It comes to making it obvious, right? If you want to do the thing, put it in your open sight, right? I've got this giant water thing that's always in front of me, so it'd be really tough for me to forget to drink water. It's very easy. It's big. For instance, it's got a full quart, I think it is, 32 ounces in this thing. So in order to drink 1/4 of what I should drink in a day, I just drink that from top to bottom. Super easy, right? I can see where it is. I know how much progress I've made. So make it obvious, make it easy. And the same thing goes for trying to eliminate things. So for those distractions, hide them, don't make it easy, right? Not only do you want to make it uh, inobvious, right? Hide the things
Sure.
that you don't want to get distracted by, but also make it difficult. So if you're getting distracted by the TV, for instance, you want to go watch Netflix or something like that,
Yeah.
put the remote somewhere ridiculous. Walk it down outside into your car, lock your car, put it in the glove box. Add these tiny little steps
Yeah.
so that you'd have to be like, I really am ready to watch TV right now for you to go watch TV, right? It's
Yeah,
it's
I love this.
it's as simple as that. So make those things difficult. Something that I did for myself was and I've talked to you about this before, is I got something called the kitchen safe, which is
Yes.
this timed plastic safe, really durable though, where you could put something in it and you could set a timer. There's no override code for it. So if you lock something away for 2 hours, you're just not going to get it for 2 hours. And that's that.
Yeah.
So you could do that with your phone or with your TV remote or with, whatever you got to do, the cookies that are staring at you. Just make
Sure.
it difficult for yourself, and make it add friction, add paths of resistance to make those things difficult. Another piece I'll say on sticking to what you want to get done is make all your tasks extremely obvious to you. So if you're write it down on a piece of paper, make a checklist type person, do that. A great way to focus on what you want to do and what's in process is to do some type of Kanban process, which is a Japanese art of work management, where essentially if you're at home and you want to do it the old fashioned way, you can you can take a wall, an empty wall, pick
Okay.
the things that you have not started but want to do, things that you are in process, and things you've completed, if you want to keep it real simple.
Sure.
I like to do the first things I need to do, then the other things I need to do, things in process, and then things I've completed. And then you take Post-it notes and you put them in each one of those categories. And as the idea is to physically move them along from section to section so that you know what's in process, what you've got, waiting for you, and what's
I
already
love
done.
this.
There's a
I've
lot of
never
great,
heard of this idea. I can't
yeah.
believe I've never heard of this idea. This is so good. So it's a way for you to physically see, like, here's what I actually need to focus on right now. These other things still exist. They're still here. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to forget about them, right? But it's not in my compartment that I need to like be in on right now. What a
Yes.
great idea.
Yes, 100%. So it's pretty game changing, I would say. There's a lot of good digital tools for this, and I'm just pulling up one right here. So I use one called Kanban. It's spelled Kanban,
Okay.
Kanban, Kanban
Yeah.
Flow. And here's just an example where I've essentially got things that are, the first things I need to do, some critical things. You've got my things I've completed, things that are in process, etc. I've got ones that are separated out by down the road. I've got ones that are separated out by someday. I've got things that are right now. I've got things that are strictly work related. And it's an amazing way to just sort of get everything out of your head. I call it a brain
Yeah.
dump, and just
Yeah.
get it on there so that you actually save cycles of your mind going, what do I need to be doing? Am I forgetting something? You just
Yeah.
outsource all that stuff.
Love
Uh,
that idea. That's super helpful. That's great.
so that's critical for sure. I'd also say, I don't have kids, so I don't have that distraction in my life. And obviously, there's things that you can't make the sacrifices around those things, and you gotta be there for your family, etc. So what I will
Yeah.
say is that if you don't have entire ability to create free moments, make sure that you're sharpening that axe throughout the day, so that when you do have a free moment, you can be effective in that moment. Meaning,
Yeah.
you arrive at that moment and you're not feeling stressed and discombobulated and like, where do I even where do I
Where do
even
I
start
start?
right now? Like, what was I working on? If you can get organized, if you can be in the right emotional and energy state for meditation and finding a way to exercise in the day and eating right and all these things, when you actually get to this point, if you do it right, you can be like ready to go right away. Here we go. Maybe 5-10 minutes to get into it, and then we're off.
Yeah, it's sort of like you're answering the next question that I was going to ask you because, I can make my office as efficient and, like a well-oiled machine if I want to. And the bottom line is Monday through Friday, I'm here with my kids, right?
Right.
So I should have moments where I'm not interrupted, but I really cannot guarantee that I won't, and that I won't have distractions. So for me, again, there's like everything else in life, there are good things that have come from this crazy change that everybody's dealing with. And one of them is it has forced me to be crystal clear on
Mm,
what the most important thing is that I have to get done today, because odds are high that's the only thing I'm getting done today. Right?
mm,
I mean, I can pretty
yeah.
much bank on the fact that's like I can cross one major thing on off my list during nap time, and
Yeah.
then maybe one other thing. So it's forced me to do that. So any, like you were saying, the way to think about it so that when you do sit down, you are as efficient as possible, and getting, the most bang for your buck when you get
Yeah.
there. I did, spend a couple days wavering on that, where I would sit down and be like, okay, now's my time, let's go. And then sort of like, all these things, right? What do I do? That needs to happen before that. This person's waiting on that. Can that wait? Can it not? And then you end up spending half of your time just sort of trying to get organized and get
Yeah.
some done.
Yeah, I mean, you named it. You named a really good point there, which is that we should all be living every day, regardless of what's going on, by focusing on the most important things first, right? The things that
Yeah,
if you could only do one thing, that would be the thing you do.
sure.
But now, like you said, you're kind of it's a necessity to think that way. So I
Yeah,
think you're approaching it 100% the right way. And when you're picking that thing, I think Tim Ferriss is the one who says this more than anybody, but figure out the thing that if you do it, that by doing it, it makes all other tasks easier or even unnecessary, right?
love that.
It's that force multiplying thing that if you were to do this thing, it might ease the workload everywhere else or something like that.
Yeah,
That's so critical. Also, you know, be deliberate about if you do have even 20, 30 minutes in the morning or something like that when before the day's gotten crazy, use that time to put first things first as much as possible. Um, I know personally, my morning before the emails start flying and people start calling me and things start getting crazy is a very sacred period where I put the things in that section that if nothing else happened in the day, I'd be okay because I got those things done in that
yeah,
moment. Um, so those are really critical. And also in those moments, again, some of the force multiplying things you can do are anything that sharpens the axe. Meditation is one of those things. Exercise is one of those things. Um, so, make sure you get the fundamentals in, because it may seem like you don't have time for exercise, or you don't have time for meditation, but those tasks will make everything else easier throughout your day.
yeah. I love that. Love that. Really good advice. Really good advice. Okay, a couple more a couple more questions for you, and then I'll kind of let you off the hook for the day.
Okay.
What do you foresee will be like, is there anything that you're thinking about that you're foreseeing as a big shift in like the coaching and wellness landscape that might come of everything that we are sort of dealing with right now?
Yeah, I think for one thing, there's almost going to be an even higher demand for it, because in normal times when we're out in the world, we actually get a lot of feedback, whether it's good or valuable or not, from the people that we're interacting with and working with, et cetera,
Yeah,
including external feedback in terms of you doing something well or a job going well, or et cetera, et cetera. And we're probably getting a little bit less of that right now. And so now more than ever, we need to find a way to keep us moving forward and keep us growing and keep us focused and kind of keep us on track and on target. And so I
yeah,
think coaches are an unbelievable way to do that. If you have somebody that can Zoom with you once a week or once every 2 weeks to hold you accountable, to just be that person who is professionally interested in your optimal performance and your growth and your happiness in a way, or fulfillment perhaps, that's so beneficial and so impactful, right? It's also this time when we have more urgency than ever about mastering ourselves, you know, figuring out what our mind is doing. Essentially, we're in this more kind of contained and controlled environment if we're all home.
Yeah.
And you're actually removing a lot of variables from your equation so that you really have the main constant, which is you and your experience in your own mind. You're removing all these variables that may be prodding you this way and that way throughout your life. So you can actually get really focused on just what your lived experience and what your mental day-to-day mindset and emotional state and kind of approach to things are, because there's not that much to complicate your experience right now if you're just at home all the time, especially.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. You know, just I'm lucky enough to have you as one of my good friends. So whenever I need a little coaching help, I can send you a text. So I'm lucky in that way.
Anytime.
But I'm sure many people listening are thinking, yeah, man, if I had a phone call with Matt once a week and, you know, could just talk to him about what it is that I'm trying to get done or
Mm-hmm.
roadblocks that I'm coming up on, or, you know, help me kind of break this mindset loop or whatever it is that people are dealing with. Now more than ever, I think it would be so valuable for people. And I'm sure our listeners are thinking that, you know, just the way I am.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure. With that being said, I am wondering what, and this has sort of been my favorite question to ask speakers actually, what is your unique message that you would like to share with the world and with our audience?
sure. Well, I think the first one is that it's incredible that we have the ability and we have the intelligence and self-awareness to be able to improve ourselves, because we can literally develop the bedrock underneath our feet that leads to a happier and more fulfilling life. Like there's so humans are the only creatures that do this, right? We're the only
Yeah,
creature with that ability of cognitive consciousness to say, wow, I can actually improve this whole thing by working on myself. And the brain is plastic and we can change things and we can get better. Um, Even when times are crazy and things we're thrown, we get something thrown at us that we've never experienced before, we can still say, okay, so how do I thrive in this environment? That's really incredible. Um, and then I also want to say that our fastest route to our own wellness, happiness, performance, etc., is us developing ourselves and you know, figuring out what system works best for us. But it's also the thing that moves the world forward. When people are healthier internally and with each other, humanity moves forward. When people think more clearly about themselves and think about how they can be a better person just in their own internal world, but also out in the external world, we actually move forward as a society. And I think that it's sort of easy to get stuck on the fact of like, I just want to be a little bit more productive day to day. But like these principles can lead to the entire human race moving forward, which is really incredible. And then in terms of my specific stance on this and the angle that I come at it at is that I think that the two big steps in terms of moving yourself forward are A, getting ultra clear on your current state, which means deep self-awareness, deep self-examination, understanding how you work and why you work that way and where you are right now. And then it's about getting really, really clear on what good looks like, what optimal looks like, how that functions, why it's good for you, why it's healthy for you, and then bridging that gap between where you are right now and where you'd like to be. And if you are ultra vividly, vibrantly, crystal clear on what's going on with you today and where you'd like to be in an optimal place, it's not that hard to build the action steps in between to get from point A to point B. Hence the name, the Clarity Track. It's a direct route in many ways. Yeah, there may be some zigging and zagging here and there, but more than
sure.
anything, you're sort of bridging the place from deep self-awareness and understanding to deep understanding of what good can be and why that is good, and actually believing it, not just because some book inspires you to believe it, but because you understand the function of it and the reasoning behind it. the practicality behind it. And when you can simplify that whole process, simplicity can lead to clarity, clarity can lead to conviction, and you can really put your full weight into these ideas and concepts and habits and move yourself forward. And I think that there's simple and rational ways to go about this, and that's what my sort of mission is, and that's what I'm dedicated to.
I love it. I love it. And that's why I wanted you to be a speaker and wanted you to be a part of this project. I think that it is such an incredible way to think about personal development and such an approachable way to think about personal, right? For people that want to do more in life, want to move forward, just feel like they want more, or that they need to make a change but aren't quite sure how. I love your idea, and I love the clarity track.
Thank you.
I'm excited to just, see all the amazing things that you do. With that being said, one last question, then I'll let you off the hook.
Yeah.
Do you have a special gift or something that you can share with our audience and just support them through this time and tell them thanks for listening?
Yeah, I do. So there's very much stemming off of what I just mentioned. I think the first step in this whole process is to get really, really clear on a few things for yourself. And that means answering a few questions really thoughtfully and with some guidance on what to be thinking about and how to answer the question, so that you come up with an answer that is very clear for yourself, it's very true for yourself, and can literally change the trajectory of your life entirely. And so what I've put together is an ebook called 12 Questions for Clarity. And it's essentially a set of 12 questions that are big, important questions, but with a lot of support on how to think about them and how to answer them and what you need to be considering before you arrive at that answer. Because I find that there's a lot of great questions posed to us in personal development, but some of them are so vague and broad that I personally sometimes am just like, I don't know.
What are you talking about? Yeah, what are you getting at here? Yeah, what's the end game? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Question, when somebody asks you like, what's the best version of you, or what's your like some of these things that are they're not very actionable questions that you're not going to arrive at a clear answer probably, and you're certainly not going to be able to use that answer to move forward. And so I've sifted through hundreds of questions, and there's certain ones that it will reliably make you super aware of something that you probably weren't aware of before. And it actually is going to reorient your focus and perspective in a way that you can hone your path, your clarity track, I guess you could say, in life, from kind of nebulous and unclear to very clear on certain things that you put a stake in the ground on. And so I want to offer that to anybody watching, listening for free.
That's awesome. I'm going to give you a hard time later for not already sharing that with me as your friend. So that's what we're going to do after we hang up here. But Matt, thanks so much for your time today. Your advice is amazing, as always. Thanks for being a part of this, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Miranda. I have to say, it is incredible that you are serving as a platform and a mouthpiece during this time to get more help out to people and more optimization and more personal growth out to people when we need it dearly right now. But I think so many other people would have completely been focused on themselves right now, and you're really focused on getting help and growth and coaching out to other people. So that's incredible, and I really am honored that you had me on here. So thank you.
Thanks so much for saying that, Matt. It means a lot. It means a lot.
All right.
Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.